what if our entire economy wasn't about money at all? Today, we're going to dive into a pretty radical critique of the system we have now and explore a blueprint for a future that sounds like it's straight out of science fiction, a world built on technological abundance, not capital.
So let me ask you a question to start. Have you ever just had that feeling that the whole economic system is, well, kind of rigged? It's a feeling you hear about a lot these days, and it's the exact starting point for the material we're digging into today.
And, this isn't just some fringe idea. A major 2020 survey found that a whopping 69% of people in France and a clear majority in Germany believe that capitalism in its current form does more harm than good. This widespread feeling, this loss of trust, is really the jumping-off point for everything we're about to unpack.
So what's causing all this? What's driving this feeling of decay? Well, the source material we're looking at points to a few core problems that are basically breaking down the system from the inside out. Let's get into it.
A huge piece of the puzzle, the source argues, is something called regulatory capture. Now, the easiest way to think about this is, imagine you've got a watchdog that's supposed to be guarding the public. Regulatory capture is when that watchdog starts working for the very company it's supposed to be watching.
And you can see how this actually happens. It's not just one thing, right? It's a whole mix of issues. You've got these incredibly complex rules that only industry insiders really understand, huge amounts of money spent on lobbying, and of course, the classic revolving door, where government regulators leave their jobs to go work for the very industries they were just in charge of overseeing.
And this problem, it doesn't just stop at the border. The text we're looking at introduces this fascinating concept of moneyland. You can think of it like a shadow financial system that operates globally. It's this whole network of offshore tax havens and shell companies that makes it super easy to hide illicit money and almost impossible to hold anyone accountable.
So what happens when you put all of this together? The source calls the end result a democracy squeeze. When you combine regulatory capture at home with this global web of corruption, everyday people start to feel like their voices just don't matter anymore. They feel like the game is rigged, and that's when social trust really starts to crumble.
Okay, so that's the diagnosis of the problem. Pretty grim, but what about a solution? Well, the one proposed in our source material requires a complete, fundamental shift in how we think. It's called a resource-based economy.
So what is a resource-based economy? The core idea is kind of mind-blowing. Get rid of money completely. Instead of using prices to ration out who gets what, the goal is to use technology to create such an overwhelming abundance of everything that goods and services can just be freely available to everybody.
And at the absolute heart of this entire concept is one simple but incredibly powerful idea, that all the resources on planet Earth are the common heritage of every single person, not owned by a nation, not owned by a corporation, but shared by all of us.
This quote from Jacques Fresco, who's really the father of this concept, just hits the nail on the head. He argued that we've been asking the wrong question. We shouldn't be asking, can we afford it? We should be asking, do we have the actual physical resources and the technical know-how to make it happen?
Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds great, maybe a little too good to be true. How would a system like this actually work? Well, the answer, according to its proponents, lies in technology.
The key term here is cybernation. Think of it as a global automated nervous system for the entire economy. It's about using computers, AI, and robotics to manage the whole supply chain, all the way from pulling raw materials out of the ground to delivering the final product to your door. And this cybernetic engine isn't some single piece of magical tech. It's a bunch of different technologies all working together. You've got the Internet of Things with sensors everywhere collecting real-time data. You need powerful AI to analyze all that data and predict what we'll need. And you'd probably use something like blockchain to keep the whole thing transparent and secure.
And here's what that can look like in the real world. We're talking about AI-driven farms that grow way more food with way less waste. We're talking about robots 3D printing houses in a fraction of the time and cost. Or AI helping doctors cut down diagnostic times by 90%. See, the abundance isn't magic, it's engineered.
Okay, so this all leads to one of the biggest questions in any world with this level of automation. If machines are doing all the work, what about us? What happens to people?
Right? It's the first thing everyone asks. If you don't have to work just to survive, to pay for food and rent, what gives your life meaning? What gets you out of bed in the morning?
The source material argues that our motivation would completely shift.
The idea is we'd move away from what they call extrinsic motivation, that hamster wheel of working for a paycheck, and move towards intrinsic motivation. People would pursue things just because they're genuinely curious, or because they love it, or because it helps their community.
So, ultimately, the whole idea of status gets turned on its head. It's no longer about how much money you have or what cool stuff you own. In a world where everyone's basic needs are met, your social currency, your status, comes from your creativity, your skills, and what you contribute back to society.
So that's the big question then. How do we possibly get from our world of lobbying and moneyland to this futuristic world of automated abundance? Well, believe it or not, the source material actually lays out a potential roadmap.
The key first step, according to this roadmap, isn't Universal Basic Income, or UBI. It's Universal Basic Services, UBS. So instead of giving people cash to spend in the old market system, the idea is to just take the essentials out of the market entirely. Make things like healthcare, public transit, and housing free for everyone as a public service.
And this transition is laid out in 3 phases. First, you'd establish those universal basic services. The next phase, maybe 5 to 15 years, would be all about building out the AI and smart city tech needed to manage everything. And then, finally, the goal is to reach a mature resource-based economy, where work is truly optional for survival and all resources are managed for the common good.
And that brings us to the ultimate question, doesn't it? The technology to build this world of abundance seems to be developing faster every day. But the social and political will to actually make it happen, well, that's another story entirely. So is this vision a glimpse of our inevitable future? Or is it just a fascinating political fantasy? That's a question we'll all have to answer.